Okay, welcome everybody to our lightning talks for April 11th, 2024. We have 4 presentations today. Let me remind everybody about some of the ground rules we have for these talks. The presenter has roughly 5 minutes to present their topic or demo, etc. I timed mine out last night and it was about 7.5 minutes, so I'm going to go over, but I usually tell people between 5 and 10 minutes is perfectly good. During the presentation, we try to have it be just a presentation and a demo. So try to kind of keep your questions and comments for later. And in the Lightning Talk Google Chat space, I'll create a thread or I'll create a post for each of the talks that are done. And if you want to have questions or you have questions about it, you can do that, or you can ask the person directly in any way you want to communicate. The meeting is being recorded. And my pitch is always, if you have an idea for a lightning talk, reach out to me. We can do it in the future. And I just thought about this, but if you have a topic that you want to hear a lightning talk about, something that you've read about or you kind of have heard but don't quite understand or aren't really sure how it is relevant to software construction, then reach out and I can try to see if I can solicit someone to talk about that topic for you. Today, we're going to start with Bart and an intro to DNS. I'm going to talk about a tool named ngrok. Joe is going to talk about managing sprints with Azure Dev Ops Tools, and Ed is going to finish up with Obsidian note-taking app. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll turn it over to Bart to begin his talk.
All right, let's go ahead and share screen. Yeah. All right, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so my talk today is on DNS, which stands for Domain Name System. It's something we all use every day. If you're on the internet and surf around or run apps or anything, it's basically the textbook definition is pretty boring. This is from Wikipedia. The domain name system is a hierarchical and distributed naming system for computer services and other resources on the internet. Associates various information with domain names assigned to each of the associated entities. Most prominently, it translates these names to numerical IP addresses. We as humans mostly can remember names much better than numbers, but the internet is a bunch of computers and they communicate via IP addresses, numbers. So the DNS system allows us to basically translate those names to numbers. So basically, when you're on your computer, your laptop, and you open up your browser and you go to Amazon.com, you eventually will get resolved or connected to a server or server farm that gives you the stuff that you're looking for. So if you go to Amazon, you're expecting to see the Amazon website. However, that name, Amazon.com, got translated to IP addresses, and how does that happen? Well, luckily, DNS is a pretty smart system that we'll see an example of here, and it is not like the classic kids' book, Are You My Mother?, where a little bird is born in a nest, and while his mom is out getting food for him, he falls out of the nest and he starts looking for his mother. He just randomly starts going to a dog, a cat, a crane, a boat, asking if they're their mother, and they obviously say no, and the bird can just, all they can do is just keep walking around randomly asking random things if they're his mother. So DNS is not like that, fortunately. I found a diagram here that will show the flow, and I'll go over this quickly here. So basically, when you're on your laptop and you type Amazon.com, the first thing it does is it checks its cache. And all components in the DNS system have caches. And caches are simply just something that is information that they've saved that can be accessed readily and quickly and prevent having to go to a database or out to the internet to get stuff. So in this example, this is the very first time you've ever accessed Amazon.com on your laptop. So it checks the cache on your laptop. It does not have the answer for what the IP address of Amazon.com is. So it goes to your router in your house. Same thing, it has a cache, it checks its cache, it doesn't know the answer, so it goes to the ISP DNS resolver. This will be like your Xfinity, your Fios. Google runs their own DNS servers, but basically same business here. It looks for its cache, for the answer, and shockingly, Fios doesn't know what Amazon.com is. So at this point, we're kind of like, well, where do we go now? And you'll notice here on Amazon.com, there's this final period here, which is kind of hidden from most domains, but it does exist, and that refers to the root domain. And essentially every DNS resolver in the system, or recursive resolvers, know how to get to the root servers. So basically, FiOS then goes to the root server, and this is a grouping of servers that know the IP address of, or name servers for a portion of the domain. So basically, it goes to the root name server and says, hey, I need Amazon.com's IP address. They say, well, I don't know what Amazon.com is, but I do know where the com servers are. And so it basically gives the IP address of all those servers. And then it goes to the com TLD servers. Now, TLD stands for top level domain, and these are a bunch of name servers that refer to the final portion of domains. So .com, .edu, .org. And so it asks the same question. Hey, I need Amazon.com. And they say, well, I don't know Amazon.com, but I do know where the authoritative name servers that have that answer are, and I'll give you those. And so then it goes to the authoritative name server for Amazon.com and ask the same question. And at this point, they do know the answer. They know that the IP address for Amazon.com is 205.251.242.103. So it returns that information back. And then this resolver saves that information in the cache. It goes back down the chain to the Wi-Fi router. It saves its information in the cache back to your laptop. It saves that information in the cache, and then finally gives the answer back to you, and then your browser can connect to that IP address directly. So you can see this is a very large process here that happens every single time you ask for any resource by name on the internet. So it's obviously a very large system, very distributed, lots of servers involved. As an example here, if you're on your on your cell phone, your Wi-Fi network, and you ask for Amazon.com after you've done this whole process, you'll notice you get connected to your Wi-Fi router. It asks its cache. It has the answer because it was cached on the way back from the laptop's request, and it gives it right back, and it doesn't have to do any of this flow. Likewise, on your neighbor, if you're both on FiOS and your neighbor asks for Amazon.com, it hits its Wi-Fi router in its house. It doesn't know the answer. Then it goes to the FiOS name resolver, and it does know the name because I put it there when I asked for it. It gets it from its cache and then gives it there as well. So it bypasses the need for this whole travel. So dig is a utility, a command line utility that you can use to actually see the results of everything that I just showed you here. It's a command line utility, and if you specify trace with the as an option, it'll basically bypass any cache. So you'll see the flow like I just showed you here. So in this case, we asked for Amazon.com. It connected to the root resolver, and it got the list of all the root resolvers. So this is, this is the listing of all of them. I did shorten this list for brevity, but there's a lot of servers here. So just randomly pick rootservers.net and then connected to that. Ask the same question. I need Amazon.com. I said, I don't know Amazon.com, but I do know the com servers, and that's the MGTLD servers. It connected to that, and then it's asked the same thing, and then we have the list of all of the authoritative name servers for Amazon. It picked one of those, and then it got the answer back of the A record. So that flow is just, you can run anytime you want, and you can actually see the travel that DNS request goes through. Finally, we've mentioned a couple of types of DNS records. There's about 30 different types. The A record is the one that we've kind of talked about the most, which is simply the IP address associated with the name. A CNAME is more like an alias for an existing name. So when you ask for www.amazon.com, it actually, www is a CNAME for Amazon.com. And so it just then says, okay, give me Amazon.com, and then return that back for www. MX is a mail exchange record. So when mail servers are passing email throughout the internet, it's asking for MX type records, and those identify mail servers. Authoritative name servers, we've seen a bunch of examples of those. Those are essentially the servers that are authorized to answer for a domain name or some subset of domain, like .com or whatever. And finally, AAA records are simply IPv6 addresses that resolve to a name instead of IPv4. And that is it for me. I guess we will stop sharing and pass it on to the next guy.
That would be me. Okay, let me share my screen again. And go. And if I can find. Okay. Sorry, a lot of screen manipulation going on here. Let me start with slideshow. So ngrok. So ngrok's a tool that I was sort of turned on to from when I was working on one of our customers here at Solution Street. They were using it. I thought it was pretty cool and easy to use. So I thought I'd share, because there's definitely some use cases where I think when building web applications, it can be pretty useful. Definition: globally distributed reverse proxy that secures, protects, and accelerates your applications and network services. Essentially, one of the main usages of ngrok is to allow others to proxy into a locally running development server that you might have running on your local machine, so they can actually access it and run for example, a web app that you have built locally. So a very simple use case: you might want to allow others, let's say it's a QA tester, a project manager, even a client or another developer, to easily access the locally running web app on your development machine from anywhere. So the emphasis here is on easily. I was very impressed by how easy it is to set this up and get this working as compared to some alternatives. And so I wanted to share it. Let's do a demo. Okay, so we're going to start off by running. Let me start again. I have an application that I built that is very, very simple. I created the sentence generator app. It uses the create React app utility. So it's a React application. It uses Material UI components. And I use the JSON bin service for some simple RESTful actions. And JSON bin is maybe a topic for another lightning talk. It works pretty easily. User can come in here and say, let me put a name in and create a sentence, and it will go off and create a random verb and a random noun and give us Katie pokes quails. I don't have any kind of real time working on this, so you have to sort of hit refresh if someone else is going to update sentence generator. Okay, so let's pretend that I've got a QA tester ready to go and they want to see what I've done with the app to this point. I'm not ready yet to push my code or create a pull request, but I want to just see if I've laid things out properly, if they can find any quick bugs I've got so I can fix them before it even gets into the code base. Let's see how ngrok can help. Ngrok here's the website, ngrok.com. It's actually, since the last time I looked at this several years ago, it's gotten a lot more features and a lot more complex. But in terms of sign up, it's pretty easy. I've already signed up. And in terms of download, you can actually, if you're on a Mac, you can use Homebrew to install it, or you can download it from their downloads page and get up and running. If you sign up for an account, it gives you one very quick and easy advantage. You can actually have a custom domain that you can use, so your name that you actually give to other people stays the same, and we'll show that in a minute. So my server is running currently on port 3000. And so what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to very simply start my ngrok server by cheating and copying and pasting. Ngrok HTTP, HP localhost 3000. And what's going to happen is it's now started up an ngrok server here. Okay. If I copy this, come over, paste that in, and it's working. And I can now, add another sentence. If I come back to running on localhost, I'll have to say refresh, but it shows that it's working. Okay, so I've accessed it. So where's the advantage? Well, I might have a QA tester, maybe Matt Smith is helping me test this application, and I can send him, which I'm doing right now over chat, the same URL I just used to get into it over here. And I think if Matt has a second, he's going to try to add a sentence as well. I'll just keep my eye on it here. There he goes. Oh, look at that. Bart loathes koalas. Okay. So as you can see, pretty easy to get this up and running. So what other kind of features do we get out of this? If you want to use a custom domain, so as you saw, this domain is a series of numbers. You can actually sign up for an account. I actually do. I've got a domain that they assigned me called Simple Fitting Drum. And so if I come back and I Control C out of here. It's pretty simple. I can just say, oh, sorry, I did not show that long enough. Just add the domain parameter, give it the same port you're looking for. It assumes localhost. And now I can use this, and this will not change. It's my domain. As long as I have a app running, you can get into my account here. Okay, so very similar. It will allow others. I can send that URL to others. They can get it. So what if I want to limit who can actually get onto my server? So in that case, one of the features, let's go back to my terminal that I can use, paste it in. I can set my domain, and I can use an OAuth parameter, OAuth equals Google, and allow email of jschuman@solutionstreet.com. So now that I've started this, if I come back here and I try to go to the same URL, because I use that custom domain, it's going to ask me to sign in. I pick my Google account, I come in, and I'm in. But what if someone else tries to get in? So I'm just going to go to my personal Google account. As I try to get in, it's going to challenge me. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to use jschuman@gmail.com. Continue, and it stops me. I can't get in. Okay, so that's how you can sort of restrict it to 1 or 2 developers. It's a comma separated list if you really wanted to add other Google accounts. Okay, so the last thing I'll show from an authentication standpoint is, well, what if I wanted to have a team of developers? Maybe I want to let all the QA people on our team test my site. What you can do is you can actually use simple basic authentication. I've got my user and my pass 1, 2, 3. Come back in, and I need to kind of go back, I think. Well, I'll just copy paste. Sorry about that. Grab my URL again. My user, my pass 1, 2, 3, and I'm in. And now I can say, what does Emily do? Emily imagines frogs. Go back to here, refresh. Emily imagines frogs. One, I don't know if it's a bug or a feature, but as you saw, I was already connected to my domain here. When I just hit refresh, it just worked. It didn't ask me to authenticate again. Now, if I Command R, it'll ask me to authenticate. So I found that bug this morning. I wanted to see if that would work. So they've got what I would maybe call a bug, and that they don't actually re-authenticate. But yeah, so that's ngrok. If you want to try it out, give it a shot. I think there are some use cases where it can be helpful if you're developing your application and you want someone else to quickly give you feedback or take a look. As you saw, it's actually very, very simple to use in a pinch. So hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to stop sharing, and Joe is next.
Thank you. You'll be able to see that presentation. My headset was up. Can you see that presentation? All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Agile tools. This is very high level in terms of the tools that are available within Agile in terms of using DevOps. If you want more detail, again, as I talked about, ask me questions later. So first of all, an intro to Azure DevOps. It's a comprehensive suite of tools designed to support the entire software development lifecycle. It's used for project management, version control, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and collaboration within a software project. And Azure DevOps is widely used by teams for Agile. It offers robust features and for sprint planning, for sprint tracking, and execution. And I'll touch on some of these right now. So first, in terms of sprint planning and Agile, it offers you a backlog. Which a backlog essentially is a collection of user stories, project backlog items, etc., that you may that the project owner will identify for the software. So this can contain any feature that you want for the software. It might be technical items, features for the software, individual features within there. And when you've got your backlog, Agile offers this very very easy to use list of all those features. And once you're within there, you can drag and drop those within a rank. So if you're planning the next sprint, you can go through, you can look at all the items that have been identified. You can easily drag and drop those within that list to have that priority later. So it helps drive further things down the road and set that priority order for the team. When you're in a sprint, for sprint execution, it offers sprint boards, which are very handy. They can show you in terms of what's active in the sprint, what state they're in. It takes each one of those and it groups them into columns in terms of where they are in the sprint cycle. You have your items on the left, which are items we have identified for the sprint, and then they work their way across the board from left to right. So they work into to-do, which means we haven't started them yet. In progress means someone's picked them up and worked on them. Ready for staging, the development's done, that's ready to go to test. Once it's in testing, it'll sit in the to test, and then finally done. So you can see those items throughout the sprint work across. It also has very conveniently the backlog, the sprint burn down is easily displayed on that screen as well. So, you start usually with the full, sprint worth of work, and that'll work its way down, to the point where you have no work left. So you want to see a steady stream of that going down as the sprint goes along. And it does have details on the side as well. So it shows us how much we've committed to as a team, what's left. And it's got easy indicators to determine, hey, are we getting behind? So if one of these items we're running out of time in the sprint, they may go red to say, to let us know that, hey, someone might need help here. We might need to shift some work, or we might just talk to the product owner about, hey, what should we pull out to make sure we're still going to meet our goals for this sprint? Every ticket, every item that you work on has its own discussion board. And us as a team, we try to put every detail we can into those tickets. So if we've had a discussion and we've worked out details or we've answered something about a ticket, you want to get that in there. And the discussion's there. You can go back, you can reference that later. If at some point, there's a question about what decision was made, it's important to have that in the ticket. But each story has the discussion you've gone through, and that's searchable. So anytime you have a question, you can search that. It might, hopefully you've documented it and it'll come up in terms of like something that's been talked about before. It has a built-in notification and alerts once you've registered. If a ticket's assigned to you, if a ticket's been updated, you will get emails for that. And if you're using the Git within Azure, same way you'll get build execution messages. If there's an issue with the build, you get emails for that. And it has a handy team calendar, so that can track time off for the team. You can see who's in, who's out, what days. And that actually also factors in the time available for the sprint. So if someone has like a week off during the sprint, that'll be reflected in the sprint burn down chart, and as well as how much time's available. So it easily tells you, hey, you might have over accounted somebody for that month. It's got unlimited amount of reports and dashboards. You can pretty much customize to any details in Azure. You can generate that report, get the detail, and run that anytime. It has tools that monitor the team's performance and velocity. So as the sprint's going on, you can look at past sprints, see how much work we did, see how that velocity worked out. And that velocity can help you for predictive tools for future sprints. So if you've determined a velocity number for the team, you can actually take your backlog and say, show me how this might look, and it'll break down what's left in the backlog and show you where those sprints would work out. It'll draw like an imaginary line to say, hey, if you continue your velocity at this point, this is how long you have, and this is where you'll fall within the backlog for each release. And then it has sprint retrospectives built in. So once your sprint is done, you have a sprint retrospective you can create. It's got the ability for anyone on the team to go out, add items that went well, what didn't go well, improvement suggestions, and it facilitates that whole conversation. So you can go through those items, you can track them. It keeps track of all the retrospectives. So you go back, you can look at those later, and continue to build upon that. Within that, it has metrics, that lets you monitor, again, signs for improvement. It helps identify items that you may need to improve on the team. And it helps you refine those processes, right within Agile. Really, that's it. Just again, very high level. Those are the features. It's if you ever get into Azure DevOps, you haven't used it, it can manage a sprint very well. If you want to see any of those in more detail or want more information, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
All right, we're going to wrap up with Ed.
All right. Let me share my screen here. Okay, I'm giving a talk about the Obsidian note-taking app. Again, my name is Ed McDonald, work at Solution Street, and here we go. So first obvious question is, what is Obsidian? Well, you're looking at it. I'm giving this presentation in Obsidian, and the most important thing, I think, in my opinion, about Obsidian is that all content is in Markdown. So it's a note-taking app where all content is in Markdown. And I can show that briefly. Right here is the directory I'm writing all this in. Obsidian is managing this, but as you can see, it's just a bunch of Markdown files. Okay, next question, what can it do? Well, since it's just files in a directory, it's pretty easy to sync. Obsidian offers a subscription where, in addition to other services, you can get their hosted syncing. So they will host your stuff and they'll sync it for you. But you can also use Dropbox or rsync or NFS or basically wherever you store files and whatever system you use to just sync files between two locations. It works with Obsidian. It has a rich plugin system. We're going to talk about some of those plugins. I'll demo those today. It also has a rich templating system. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't use it. I haven't gotten that far in my Obsidian expertise yet. Someday I plan to. Very important to me is it has VI key bindings. So Obsidian is already what I would call a modal editor because you can switch between editing mode, which I'm doing now with a keystroke, and rendering mode. And VI itself is a modal editor. So my inside joke for VI fans is that Obsidian is with VI key bindings is a modal editor. It will also let you import from other note-taking apps. Now, I hope that you are seeing my screen switch to a browser. I'm going to list here are some apps that you can import into Obsidian from. The big ones that I recognize are Evernote, Microsoft OneNote, and then just Markdown files. I've never heard of Roam Research. I think I've heard of Notion, but basically if you already have a favorite note-taking app that you're getting tired of, you can switch to Obsidian and Obsidian will import the files for you. Okay, let's go into a little bit more detail of things it can do. I'm a math guy, so this is one of my personal favorites. You can use math checks, and obviously you can also use footnotes. So I'm going to switch here back to editing mode, and we can poke around and see what we're doing here. Again, this is all Markdown. Anyone familiar with LaTeX, this should look somewhat familiar to you. MathJax is essentially LaTeX for the web. That's grossly oversimplifying, but MathJax lets JavaScript render this, so I don't need LaTeX installed on my machine. MathJax ships with Obsidian, so I just type this and I get this nice rendered mathematical equation below. Footnotes. Briefly, here we're in editing mode, so one of the footnotes sort of disappeared. Well, let me show this. So you'll see here I have two footnotes, and down here they just take me to links for more detail. The first of those footnotes I did inline. So I said, this is the name of the footnote, and this is what I want the content to be. The second footnote, I set an anchor, which makes me responsible for defining the anchor at the bottom of the page. You'll notice that when I render, both footnotes get put right in place. This is the inline one. This is the one I explicitly anchored. All right, so next up. Anyone who's familiar with Mermaid is a Markdown language or Markdown extension for supporting all different kinds of diagrams. The one I have here is a sequence diagram. So here I'm going to create a sequence diagram that says Ed talks to the audience, then the audience showers Ed with applause. Hold the applause, please. And then to celebrate, Ed will go to Rawal Kebab and buy his favorite dinner afterwards. So let me render this as a diagram. Now, this is a bug in Obsidian. You have to look very close to see the arrows here. In dark mode, which is my preferred mode to run this in, the arrows don't show up. In non-dark mode, light mode, they will show up. It's a bug, they're aware of it, they're working on a fix. Okay, now another plugin, one of my favorite plugins, the tasks plugin. So Obsidian has native support for tasks, but there is a plugin that makes the support a little bit richer. So here I have a list of tasks. If I switch to edit mode, you can see, actually you can't see it. So we'll come back to that. We'll do a demo. So I have 4 tasks here. So number one, I'm going to talk about the task plugin, which I'm doing right now. And then I will talk about the table extended plugin. But before I do that, let me open a new tab. This looks like a mess now until I render it. Okay, so I've already talked about the task plugin. Now I want you to look on the right-hand side here. The task plugin has support for querying tasks. The key to this page on the right is it's programmatically generated. So I have 4 queries, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this layout in a second. But you'll notice that when I check tasks off, they disappear from here and they show up in the done list. So I've talked about the task plugin. Now I'm going to talk about the table extended plugin. That's the plugin that lets me lay this out as a table. All right, I've talked about that, checked it off. So now, this is a shout out to my boss, Greg, who works at Solution Street, which I promised I would do. This is using the Covey method, which Greg told me about. So the Covey method is breaking all of your tasks into 4 categories: urgent or not urgent, important or not important. The key is I wrote queries that arrange my tasks for me based on the date that they are due and whether or not they have this important tag. So if it's due within a week and it's important, it will show up as important and urgent. If it's due after a week and important, it will show up as important and not urgent, etc. Again, I'm going to share all these slides on GitLab. There will be links here where you can read all you want about the Covey system and both of these plugins. All right, did my shout out to Greg. You'll notice that that was important. I promised him I would do it. All right, so now let's try creating some tasks. So if I come down here and put this in edit mode, this is my favorite feature about Obsidian, is anywhere I'm at, I can create a task. And creating a task looks like this: a hyphen, left square brace, space, right square brace. So it creates a box that looks like a checkbox. And then I can say, finish this slide. I can give it a, now let's see where it shows up. So it doesn't have a due date yet, so it's not urgent and it's not marked as important, so it's not important. Now, if I take the due date and say it's due today, it will move over to urgent, but it's not important yet because I haven't marked it important. So now if I mark it as important, it shows up in important. Look at that. And because it's important, I will finish it. And now I've actually finished this task as well. Okay. Let me close that and we can go on to the next slide. So that was it. This is the link to the GitLab repo. I'm sorry, not GitLab, GitHub. And yeah, that's everything. But since this is a lightning talk, I'm not taking questions. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Ed. And that's awesome. I'm going to give that a try. So, and I would say to most of us out there on this call that if you're not familiar with Markdown, you haven't had a chance to use it, I would sort of start to consider Markdown to be a pretty fundamental thing that most people in the software construction industry at this point should know. It's just used in a lot of different areas. So I put Markdown up there with, let's see, like regular expressions, where you should have some working knowledge of it, regardless of what you actually do in your day job. Okay, well, that's it for our lightning talks. Just another pitch that if you're interested in doing a lightning talk, reach out to me. As you can see, the topics can vary wildly. The amount of detail you go into can also be pretty wide. Remember that we're just trying to pass knowledge along here. So if you find a cool tool, even if you don't consider yourself an expert in it, it's not too difficult to do a lightning talk and give people an introduction to something that you found useful or interesting. If you also have heard of something and you're not quite sure about it, you don't know what it's all about, and you'd like to hear a lightning talk on that, send that to me also, and I'll see if I can find someone to give a lightning talk on a particular topic that you're interested in. But thanks for participating. Have a great rest of your day today, and thanks again. To all of our presenters, Bart, Ed, Joe, thank you. Have a great day.